Evening, everyone. Welcome to our Prescott Town Council meeting for Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order under item 1. And as always, we'll begin this meeting of council by acknowledging that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and the Oneida and Haudenosaunee peoples. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. Oh, I should note that we do have regrets tonight from Councillor Leanne Burton. And moving on, though, on under 2, we have approval of the agenda tonight. Recommendation is the agenda for the council meeting of April 19th, 2022 be approved as presented. But we will add one item with council's approval under presentations, as we have a good news presentation tonight, and we'll be inviting them up here shortly. So if I could have a mover on that recommendation to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor McConnell, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any further discussion on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest from members this evening? Seeing none. And so presentations, we'll like to, I guess I'll bring forward Mr. Annable and his crew tonight. And we've got a very special presentation. I'll leave it up for Dave to make the full presentation. If you want to come forward and do it here on camera, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so we're here tonight to present the proceeds from the 2022 Leeds Grenville Small Business Trade Show. We shifted gears in conjunction with council and the town, and we're happy. Victoria has a check that she is presenting to Denise from Beacon Bags for $1,000. And again, this is proceeds from the admissions from the weekend's events, which was a great success. And we're happy to support your cause, and we hope it helps. And anything we can do in the future, you just let us know.
Thank you. I want to say thank you so much. The trade show was a great place for us to get launched and just meet people from the town. And so it was wonderful. And Victoria took very good care of me. And so I want to thank you and appreciate that. And I just thank the town council for bringing me in today. And this money is going, all of it, to an emergency shelter for women and girls rescued from human trafficking. So this is a wonderful donation, just being acknowledged as a charity in your town. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll do a quick photo.
Yeah.
I can just get one from you after. Council, come on up.
Yeah, come on up. A good backdrop.
Yeah, me too.
Slide right in so everyone can get in. It'll match our photo from last year.
They can get us all in.
Can we do that? Oh, yeah. You want to do it?
In front of you? Sure. Excited to meet you.
I learned at the trade show, don't move till Dana says okay. You'll have to reposition.
I didn't know 8 people can hold their breath.
I was sucking in to begin with.
Thanks again, Dave. You've made a great mark on Prescott with bringing the show here these last few years, and now helping out another great group that does such incredible work. I know you were there all weekend as well, getting the word out. And it's something that people have to hear more of, because people think we're insulated from that, but we're along the 401 corridor. It's a significant issue, and people have to be cognizant of the risk with trafficking, human trafficking like that. So thanks so much for all you do and your whole team, Denise. It's just some great stuff overall, and great partnership with Dave and his group as well. When he came forward, and council was fully on board with this as well, because usually the money comes back to us for the arena. We know the money's gonna do more for you. It's gonna mean more for Beacon Bags than it will for us. So we're happy to help out as well. But it's all thanks to this guy and his fantastic show. Thanks.
There we go.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
You want to stay for the rest of the year? Yeah, I want to learn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. And 5 delegations, nothing this evening. 6 minutes of our previous council meeting. We do have under 6.1, the meeting from April 4th, 2022. Recommendation reads that the council minutes dated April 4th, 2022 be accepted as presented. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Shankar. Any discussion on that set of minutes from April 4th? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. 7, communications and petitions. Nothing formally there this evening. Excuse me. Under 8, consent reports, we have the usual item there with in the information package. We also have the flag policy under 8.2. Would anyone like those items split up? Would anyone like to speak to one individually tonight? Seeing none, so we'll proceed with the standard recommendation under consent reports that all items listed under the consent report section of the agenda be accepted as presented. If I could ask for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Shankar, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion is carried. 9, committee reports. Nothing there this evening. 10, Mayor, I'll pass tonight, and we'll go straight to 11 and outside boards, committees, and commissions, and start with. I gotta forget Councillor Jansman up there on the big screen. I'll start with Teresa. Anything under 11 tonight from outside boards, Councillor Jansman?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. We had our BIA meeting on April 12th. And the staff, as always, gave wonderful highlights, and including an update on the BIA website, and yet another described yet another beautification idea. Announced the community cleanup day to be April 23rd, so mark that down. And the BIA AGM date has been set as well for May 31st. And that meeting brought about a lot of recommendations from the subcommittees, and a lot of money got approved to be spent for a lot of exciting and valuable projects. So there's lots to be looking forward to as far as the BIA is concerned. And that's it for me, Brett. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. I just want to add to that quickly because I was at that meeting as well. Just some great stuff happening with the BIA overall. And I think people in town will be very happy to see how much activity is going to be happening in the Riverwalk district and along the entire waterfront in the next few weeks. So it's a very, very good meeting and some real positive stuff happening. Thanks, Teresa. Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'll just touch briefly on the activities that were held at the library last week. I know some of us were able to attend. I was there at the same time as Councillor Shankar on one occasion, and we were able to answer some questions for new folks. That's always interesting to see new folks. It came to my attention during one of the times that I was at the library that before this planned activity that we had last week, we had 25 new members join the library.
Great. And
most of those from Prescott, as we do take members from the surrounding area as well, but most of them were from Prescott, new people to town. So our library serves a very useful function. Shakespeare, big announcement coming from Shakespeare on the 23rd, which is later this week. Their season will be announced, and I've seen the poster that's coming out today, as a matter of fact, for the first time, and it's going to be a very exciting summer. People are going to be very happy with what Shakespeare is going to present, and I'm not giving any tips as far as that goes. And I'll leave it at that, Mayor Todd. Thank you.
fantastic, Councillor McConnell. Great to hear so many good things on the way. The library that week was, I know, very busy, and Shakespeare, awesome to have this, all the positive news coming forward. Thank you again. Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Connect Youth Board of Directors met today at noon and basically signed over our agreement to join John Howard Society. Now, the official takeover date is going to be later this year, probably. We need to hear from Customs and Revenue Canada, naturally, for doing an audit of both businesses to make sure that we blend as we hope to. So the official date of that will be announced later this year when that's all taken care of between the legalities that we've been dealing with. So, one other thing that last week was the first King's Kitchen meal on Wednesday night. And it's nice to see them back in action. And at an upcoming meeting, I'm going to challenge fellow councillors and staff to attend one of those meetings upcoming, or one of those meals upcoming, and just to show our support and our thanks for them being able to be back in business again. They were missed, as were other agencies during the COVID. And I know it's very thankful that they're being able to reboot and get going again. So get ready for a challenge I'm going to put forth here at an upcoming meeting. So, thank you. That's it for me.
Good reminder on that as well. They do such fantastic work, and sometimes almost the community takes it for granted. They've been doing it for so long and doing such a great job with it. And the Christmas dinners as well. I mean, we really owe them a real debt of gratitude for all they've done.
Well, I think
They're continuing to.
COVID has given us some sober second thoughts on a lot of this that we maybe took for granted, you said took for granted, or just overlooked maybe in the past. So maybe we can show a little more appreciation as we go down the road there.
Always good points. Thanks, Mike. Councillor Shankar.
Thank you. As Councillor McConnell mentioned, I did attend Library Week and met a few newcomers to Prescott, which was always fun, and got to meet got to congratulate the new head librarian and everything. So that was fun. We had that joint task force meeting last week. That was well attended and lots covered. I know we have something coming up to present to council today about the recreation and tourism asset inventory. It really shows so many things to do in this town and surrounding area, and it would be good if we can get everyone on board on that. A couple weeks ago, the Leo was held, the midget AA tournament was held in Cardinal, and it was from all reports, it was a great success. 12 teams there, and a couple of local teams did very well. Our own South Grenville Rangers made it to a final, and it was well attended. And it's nice to see the kids that didn't have this to celebrate the last 2 years get to play. So it was really nice that way. I think most people have seen the lights down at the waterfront. It's almost worth the drive to come down at night to see that. It's really quite pretty, and I think it will be a nice attraction for the summer. I think that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I did get a message from Councillor Burton. I wanted to congratulate Deputy Clerk Caitlin Mallory for her first in-person meeting.
Thank you.
Forgot.
Thanks, Carl. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Greg. I did not attend any meetings in the last couple of weeks, but I also wanted to remark on the lights along the waterfront. They look great at night, and waited for them, but I'm glad we waited, and they're an asset to the town for sure. The other thing that I was very pleased to see was the how quickly the building was removed. The former deli tattoo parlor building. 3 days, 4 days, Wednesday to Saturday or something. They were very, very efficient, and they did it without any major trouble in the downtown. So we appreciate that, and I see people are parking there already, thinking it's a municipal parking lot. But anyway, it's good that an unsafe building has been removed from the downtown, and we look forward to something taking its place.
Absolutely, and we all hate to see those older buildings go. We've got a bad rap over many, many decades for that downtown, for the fire and other circumstances, but this was one we had no choice. And quite frankly, it looks better now, cleaned up. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because they really did an excellent job, and we're into there in no time. You barely noticed the building coming down and the cleanup. So,
So that when the backhoe touched the wall, it came down very easy.
yeah. Yeah, I think the five of us probably could have gone in there with a couple of crowbars late some night and taken it down in the shape that was in, but it did have, its time was up, unfortunately. It's sad to see those old buildings go, but this was a pure safety issue, so. But yeah, thanks for all of that for everyone, and we'll move on. We have a number of items under staff this evening, and starting off is 12.1, that's staff report 47-2022, the recreation and tourism asset inventory. Looking at the next steps there, this is coming forward from the meeting in Augusta. So the recommendation reads that council directs staff to undertake the next steps in the recreation and tourism asset inventory as outlined in staff report 47-2022. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. And I believe, Mr. Armstrong, that is yours. Give us the highlights, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this is just a continuation of bringing back what was discussed at the joint council meeting and to formally adopt the recommendation for the town of Prescott. So the next steps would include continuing to add assets to the recreation and tourism inventory, collaborate on activities and events between the municipalities, cross-promote activities and events in the municipalities, invite Edwardsburg Cardinal to participate, and then create a marketing plan and materials, including maps, digital materials, print materials, and an advertising campaign. In the course of that meeting, it was also put forward that a joint recreation committee be struck, and that the town of Edwardsburg Cardinal be invited to participate in that as well. So a formal invitation will be going out to, if it's accepted this evening, to the township of Wastewater Cardinal, once both Augusta and Prescott is approved. And we did provide just a rough draft of the term of reference. So the committee mandate is to explore areas of collaboration between participating municipalities in relation to recreational activities. Membership will be one elected member of council. Primarily would be the one that has the responsibility in their portfolio for recreation. One staff member from each participating municipality, and 3 community members, preferably from the recreational organizations that use the various facilities throughout municipalities. Quorum is just 50% plus one. Committee this committee could call on staff resources at any time to help with kind of discussion or carrying out some of those collaborative works. And then recommendations from the Joint Recreational Committee would rise to each council for formal approval and adoption and consideration. So really that's what you see in front of you this evening. At this point, there are no financial implications or environmental implications. And we also included the asset inventory as it sits today, and we'll look to build on, in our work going forward, as well as obviously if Edwardsburg Cardinal would like to join, then adding them as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. So open it up for comments, questions from members of council this evening. Everybody rush in at once. Any comments? Seeing none, then I guess we're pretty good to endorse this. I guess we talked this out at the joint meeting. So all in favor? Motion is carried. So next steps on this, we'll get the invite out to Edwardsburg Cardinal and then share the approval of this with Augusta to make sure they're on.
And I believe Augusta's meeting is next Monday.
Okay.
So I will just wait to send out the invite until after Augusta's approved.
Okay. The one thing I just will add in terms of the terms of reference, Matt, we just talked about that last week. Put this down as, we can change this if anybody's actually looking for any tweaks to the terms of reference, even the membership, any of it. We just thought it was something basic to get us started and hopefully get the other 2 municipalities on board with this. So it's work in progress. So it doesn't have to be carved in stone tonight. Lee?
I hate to put my nose in after when I was reading this afternoon, something that occurred to me on the charts that were provided, one for Augusta Township and one for Prescott. I couldn't help but notice that in Centennial Park, that there's nothing mentioned as far as the pool, the beach, or the splash pad. I mean, there are sections for tennis, skateboard, whatever, and you check, but there's nothing as far as to signify that we have a pool, a splash pad, or a beach at Centennial Park, which is, I'd say, three of the prime.
Yeah. Something to
Now, I know
add.
it's mentioned later on, but in the chart, it seems to be missing.
There's a reason we did that. One, we were running out of room on the chart, and we included it a few pages later on because we were focused on water-based activities.
Okay.
So in the water-based activities, approximately page 26 of 29, it talks about Centennial Park as well as Riverwalk Park and the Sandra Salon Harbor and Marina. So just due to space constraints, it was going to have to really push it in. But in all of our marketing materials, we absolutely would kind of focus on the full of opportunities that there are in Centennial Park.
Good point, though. I mean, it's always good to get that out there with what we do have to offer down at the beach and the pool. Gory?
The one thing I had mentioned, I think, at the joint task force was just adding that we had 200 parking spots,
Oh, yeah.
right? Just because then you could have, those car clubs and stuff like that coming. And it would be easy to add just, seating for 800, parking for 200 or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point, because we can really make that a hub for all kinds of mobile activities like car rally.
Well, I mean, after being at the midget AA and Cardinal.
Yeah, parking half a mile away and yeah. Yeah, for sure. Good point. Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay, we're all good. Thank you. So next up, we're at 12.2. That's another item coming out of the joint council meetings under staff report 48-2022 Augusta Prescott developer package. The action items there, and the recommendation reads that council directs staff to work in coordination with Augusta Township to undertake the action items for the creation of a developer package as outlined in report 48-2022, and that council directs staff to engage EVB Engineering to complete the necessary technical work and calculations for water wastewater extension agreement, defining the associated cost to developers both west of Prescott and north of Prescott with an upset limit of $15,000, and that council directs staff to undertake the necessary studies for the town of Prescott development charges, which are required to be renewed in 2023. That's basically updated. We do have development charges, just to let people know at home, don't get excited we're adding any sort of new fees here. Could I have a mover on that, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. So again, Mr. Armstrong, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is just reflecting on what we talked about. And really it's broken down into a number of areas where studies need to occur. In terms of the Prescott or Augusta official plan, as well as the United Counties, they need to do some work around increasing the densities that are on our borders that wouldn't be appropriate if they were trying to run off of well and septic. So when you add services such as water and wastewater, then you can increase that density because you don't require as much land to do so. From there, we also have the development charges study. Again, Augusta is looking at implementing while Prescott is looking to renew. So getting that underway and working towards it takes approximately 4 to 6 months, and we're due up for renewal in 2023. Water and wastewater, we would undertake the necessary technical studies, and it was agreed that EVP could do the technical work. And if there's any disagreement in the final numbers, that it would be peer reviewed by a third party. Then there's also discussions with other providers of wastewater management, such as Nuterra, and our own water and wastewater treatment plant operators, which is Aqua. So we better understand exactly what can work with the town of Prescott water and wastewater services, and if there's other options out there in terms of wastewater that could work in conjunction. Finally, discussions with utilities, so RSL and Hydro One, Union Gas, Enbridge, Cogeco, and Bell are all part of developing that package, and there's really very minimal cost to that and can occur at any time. And finally, part of looking at the areas for development, South Nation in particular, because they're in Augusta, would look at them looking at the official plan amendment, any zoning changes, as well as anything that we need to consider in terms of constraints on any of those lines. two optional studies that we can decide on at a later date is the topographical study as well as the phase one environmental. But we would bring that back to council either later this year or early next year to decide if that's something that council in both municipalities wish to undertake. So really the two things that we're looking at from Prescott's perspective is undertaking that engineering technical work and then also undertaking the background studies for the development charges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. And again, that came forward in recommendations that were jointly endorsed by both Augusta and Prescott there at our meeting almost a couple weeks ago there. Let's open up for discussion. Any comments, questions this evening from members of council? Councilor Young.
Did we have a formal agreement with Augusta
Uh,
in the past? I know we talked with them. I know we had a number, but I don't ever remember it going through council as a formal agreement.
So we have one agreement in relation to Augusta Landings, but not an overall agreement. And so that's where we'd actually be looking to do the overall agreement so that any new development would fall under that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Young. Councilor McConnell, please.
Through you, Mayor Todd, if I may, given the fact that we actually own several acres in Augusta Township that's part of our North Industrial Park, does that have any bearing on costing on anything that would go in there? Are we more responsible than Augusta, or is it a mutual thing, or is it Augusta, or how would that work?
So for the lands north of the 401, you mean?
Yeah.
That's still to be determined. Obviously, the approval authority comes from Augusta and subsequently through the United Counties for any zoning that would go in there. And then there would have to be a further discussion around exactly, taxation, property taxation, sharing, that sort of thing.
Thank you very much.
I think we touched on that briefly at one of the joint meetings on, because it is, was it 20 acres? So it's a significant amount of land and it is obviously up for development now. So they'll see some revenue out of that. So will we. So you can make a good case that since it's revenue generation for them as well, they should, pay their fair share of it. But we hadn't come to any actual recommendations or anything, but it did come up. So it's something that is being looked at. Other comments, questions? So I think we're pretty good here, and just timelines on all of this, Matt. And Augusta seems to be moving fairly quickly on this as well. And I just wondered if you had any further conversations with their CAO with regards to their timeline and how they're rolling it out. This is going to come to their meeting next week, I'm assuming again, because we've looked at some pretty aggressive timeframes here, as I mentioned it, because we talked about it at the joint meeting. Ensuring that we're shovel ready for developers. We'll try to be shovel ready now. If somebody comes to us with a great proposal, but to have everything all aligned for some time in 2023, earlier the better, so we can get the building season. But I mean, any feedback from them yet on how they're rolling this out, or anything from their council at all yet, or is that their first look at it next week?
I think beside the conversation that occurred at the joint council meeting, I think the intention is to start with the official plan amendment. That will take a fairly substantial amount of time, but at the same time, concurrently, we can work on the water wastewater agreement, which can occur at any time, and then the development studies will also we can start fairly shortly. So really, for a prerequisite, you have to change the official plan before you change the zoning bylaws. So it's imperative that we get working on the official plan now from Augusta's perspective, but all of the other things can be started and worked on concurrently.
Okay. Sounds good. I mean, it should line up fairly well with us, just as long as they're moving along at the same pace we are, because there is a fair bit here to be done, obviously, both of us. But I think they've got a little more to do than we have with the OP stuff in particular and the development charges. Any final comments before I bring this to a vote? Councilor Ostrander.
Well, it's just nice to see that the framework is in place, and it just helps as you go forward that, you're not having to tidy anything up behind you as you go, and to have this in place is, basic stuff when you're developing. So, yeah, no, it looks good.
And that's an excellent point because I mean, you look at it on paper like this, it seems pretty simple. It's it's a couple of pages, it's a few items. It's not a huge amount of money for studies. But this is pretty ambitious stuff when you're talking about two municipalities working so closely together. So it's, it actually is really exciting. It doesn't look like a lot on paper when you look at planning documents. But I mean, this is the kind of thing that could lay out the potential for serious growth. And growth means vibrancy. Growth means so much to small communities. We need it. And I think this can really make both Prescott and Augusta really strong, viable communities for a long time to come. So it's exciting stuff that we're working together on this. Councillor Jansman, did you have anything? I don't want to forget you up there. If I'm, I know you're usually not shy, but okay. So I think we're all good then. So all in favor? Thanks, everyone. Motion's carried. And now we're on to 12.3, that's staff report 49-2022. That's a property tax and water wastewater rates comparison. I did ask for this and council endorsed this a little while back, and I think we've done it almost every year, I believe, after we've completed the budget or around that time. So Matt's put together just some comparators with local municipalities. Mr. Armstrong, let's go over that just briefly, just for people at home and what we're looking at here and how we do compare to some of our neighbors.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we took a look at the 2021 rates simply because not all of the municipalities that we use as comparators have completed their tax rates for 2022. So we focused on 2021, and as you can see from the table, and we used Prescott, Brockville, Gananoque, Pembroke, and Smith Falls. Those are the same 5 municipalities that we used for service delivery reviews. So it made sense to continue with those. From a residential, multi-residential, and commercial properties perspective, when you take the average of those 5 municipalities, Prescott is just under the average. When we take a look at industrial properties, we are slightly over the average. That being said, we are neither the highest nor the lowest in any of those categories. With the exception of multi-residential, we are the lowest. And that's something that the province was focusing municipalities on to make sure that multi-residential properties weren't being charged well in excess of regular residential. So they were aiming for I think a 2.2 or 2.4 ratio of one to the other, and we are well under that. So all of those that are close to that ratio have been capped and will continue to be capped until those numbers start to decrease. And so we're good from that perspective. When we take a look at the current water and wastewater, again, some municipalities have already passed their water and wastewater fees, some have not. And so we took whatever they have posted as their most current. And for the town of Prescott, our current rate on a monthly fee is, and based on using 15 cubic meters per month, is 87.07. With the 2% increase, we're looking at 88.81 per month. The next lowest, I believe, is North Grenville at 107, followed by Smith Falls at also 107. And then it rises to 109, 114, 136, 120, and just shy of $185 a month in Westport. So again, we are well on the low end of that comparator group, and something that we do need to look at on a regular basis is our water and wastewater fees. To make sure that we are charging enough to ensure sustainability of the overall system. But I think we've noted before that we went through a period of approximately 12 years of no increases. And since then, I believe there's been 2 increases in the last 4 years. So that's currently where the comparators lie. And as you can see, we're certainly not anywhere near the top, and not only competitive, but from a water wastewater perspective, certainly below our comparators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Open it up. Any comments, questions? Councillor Young.
So Matthew, on the chart on the first page, 0.01378848. So if your house is valued by impact at $100,000, you multiply the $100,000 times that factor, and that gives you $1,378 in tax.
That's correct.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah, that is a number that can look like Greek to everyone. I remember way back when I first had to cover municipal council with the journal, all the mill rate stuff and everything. You come into those meetings with your head swimming with this stuff, and then you see it year after year. But at least when you see it on a chart, you can just do the comparators and not actually have to know. But that's a good primer for anybody listening what the number means.
Upgraded calculators have helped that a lot.
Yeah. Councilor Shankar.
It's important to note that no matter what people on Facebook say, that our tax rates are less than a lot of places, and we're comparing ourselves here to towns that are a lot bigger than ours as well. I think if we compared it to maybe our neighbors and stuff like that, we'd be average as well.
So with our neighbors, because they're part of a two-tier system, then they have a rate that goes to the lower tier and a rate that goes to the upper tier. So they also don't tend to have full water and wastewater in their municipalities. So that's why we compare ourselves to single tiers.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it can be challenging you can do it the other way by breaking it out, but then there's always complications that it's not really an even comparison. But that's a good point for people out there to know.
I mean, it's a significant difference between $87 a month and $185 a month. I remember us talking about raising it the cost of a coffee. I think first meeting, $100 a month is a lot of coffee.
It's a chunk.
Well, it's an achievement too, because as Matt mentioned, that we didn't raise it for more than a decade here. We kept it zero because we were quite high. We jumped up quite a bit a while ago, and we really held the line on it to the point where I think Matt in particular was trying to draw our attention to the fact that we needed to ensure we had the healthy reserves, just because obviously that's an expensive line item to when you're replacing parts of the water plant. So
way back when, in the olden days, we used to supplement the wastewater, water budgets with tax dollars. There was a line in our budget called miscellaneous, and it added thousands of dollars to the tax bills because we were balancing the wastewater and water operations. So then there was a program, I think it was never fully enacted, that they should become self-sufficient, user pay. And that's when our rates went up considerably. And I remember one night in the old council chambers when Councilor McConnell and some of his neighbors came and yelled and screamed at us.
what's the garden tab?
For putting up the rates on his garden tab. That's right.
$4 to $12.
Anyway, after that, after we did become user paid, we were able to hold on for a long time.
Yeah, it's that is something we should, well, the last three councils should be kind of proud of on that one, because we resisted the urge and we did keep it down, and we've managed to do a lot with a flat revenue line item for all those years. So any other comments, questions? Yeah, thanks again, Mr. Armstrong, for bringing that forward. Always good to have that out there. And I don't know if we can turn this into something that's easy for the general public just to digest, but if we could maybe get that out there on the website and as part of the newsletter, whatever we're calling it every week. It's good to show this, because as Gory mentioned, I mean, this is not what you'd see on Facebook. People talk about rates and things that haven't existed for over a decade, particularly with the water and sewer thing. You still get complaints about that. And, the stark fact is it's not true. So good to get it out there. But thanks again, Mr. Armstrong, for bringing that forward tonight. So that was just for information. So we'll move on to 12.4, that's staff report 50-2022 on a Prescott podcast for the Canadian History EHX or X however he pronounces that. Oh, I see what he's doing with the A now. Okay, I get it now. Took a minute to clue in. Anyways, this did come up a few weeks ago, and the recommendation has come back that council directs staff to enter into an agreement with Craig Baird of Canadian History X to produce a podcast showing Prescott's unique history and tourism assets at a cost not to exceed $250. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Jansman, seconded by Councillor Young. And over to Ms. Valentine for the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, through you to council. So I believe it was actually Councillor Jansman that brought this a motion forward for consideration of council. This opportunity came forward as part of the council information package at a previous council meeting, and staff were directed to look into the opportunity a bit more. And upon further review, we are recommending that council move forward with the podcast opportunity. So it would be a cost of $250. So it's a very nominal cost, and it would essentially produce a podcast anywhere between 15 and 40 minutes in length. And it can be used on a variety of platforms. So it could be utilized through our social media channels, added as a nice feature on our website, and of course featured at the new Prescott Museum and Visitor Center. So I know that they're actively looking for new content, especially digital content that they can feature at that facility. So I think it could be a great new piece of historic information that it's really more generic in content. So it's not really meant to focus on one specific aspect of Prescott's history. It's meant to just essentially be a broader overview of the founding of the community and maybe touching on some of the unique aspects that make Prescott what it is today. And then, of course, we have ample opportunity. We'll receive basically a first draft. So staff will have ample opportunity to vet the draft product, provide comments, suggestions for revisions, maybe some other areas that they wanted to consider featuring that hadn't been included in the original. So I think all in all, it'll be a great opportunity that'll create some new content that we can use on a variety of platforms. And I did provide a link to samples of their podcast. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to listen to it, but they've certainly featured a vast number of communities to date.
Thanks, Dana. So open it up for discussion. I see Councillor Shankar, please.
Dana, I think this is a great idea. It's something you could probably run on a loop at the museum. I look forward to listening to it, and the cost is nominal. So I think good move and way to look outside the box. You know, like people talk about technology and kids nowadays and young adults, I should say. They listen to podcasts all day long. So I think it's a great idea.
Actually, that's a good question. What rights do we have?
So we would have we would have full ownership of that. It would always live on Mr. Baird's platforms, but we would have full ownership.
We have free use, as Gordy said.
Free use as part of our own. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that was a critical piece that we wanted to confirm as part of our review, that we will own the asset and be able to use it moving forward. And I think it provides some new, a new medium that really complements some of the actual physical artifacts of that have been curated for the collection.
Yeah, we definitely need some AV elements down there, and I know we're talking about adding them, and this is a great way to start this year off. Any further comments? Councillor Ostrander?
Well, it's a huge improvement over, I guess, what was the last unique thing we had was that flyover that did the pictures of the scan of town and that, and it was interesting. But this is a huge tourism boost to have this podcast. They sort of fill that gap that we can't do ourselves, really, you know. So yeah, no, good idea.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Jansman, any comments? You did speak to this at the council meeting a couple of weeks ago or a month ago.
No, thank you, Brett. Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thank you, Dana, for looking into this so well and asking all the right questions. And yeah, it's pretty much a nice addition to the town website and probably mostly to the museum. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansman. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. So now we can turn Fraser loose on him, and sure Fraser could write the script for about 16 podcast features of Prescott. So this gentleman's going to have all he can handle. Have plenty of information, anyways. So that's excellent.
And thank you. To your point, that is something I forgot to note. They would certainly be involved in that, as well as our manager of community and recreation services.
Oh yeah. They've made a fantastic team on that museum, and now here's something else they can work together on. So excellent stuff. We're very lucky to have them both. Moving along, we do have one more staff report tonight. That's 12.5 staff report 51-2022 on silencing train whistles overnight at public grade rail stops in Prescott. Recommendation reads that council directs staff to follow the process outlined by Transport Canada for the silencing of train whistling at public grade crossings in Prescott as a result of a formal request received from a Prescott citizen. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Shankar, seconded by Councillor Young. Mr. Armstrong, want to just take us through your report and the process that this would we'd embark upon?
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And we received a formal request for taking a look to see if we could silence the train whistles at the grade crossings in Prescott. We have two grade crossings, one being at Boundary and the other being at Sophia Street. And when we did our research, Transport Canada has a very well laid out process that we need to follow. So the very first step is for a citizen or community group to express interest in that occurring. And because we haven't done this in quite a long time, or as long as I've been here, thought it would be appropriate to bring it to council to go through the process. So if it's approved this evening, we would reach out to the railway company and evaluate the feasibility. If there is some level of feasibility, then we would make a public notice that notifies all organizations, associations, as well as the general public that we're reviewing this. Once that is done and underway, the municipality and the rail company will assess each of the crossings and determine if they meet the standard or not. So not only each of the crossings need to meet a standard, but the corridor that runs through town needs to meet a certain standard as well. So there's a bunch of rules that we'll need to go through and evaluate if that passes or not. And if there's any disagreement, then Transport Canada has outlined a disagreement policy as well as to how you go about resolving those. And so that's really, in a nutshell, the process that it goes through. Once you agree that either they pass or that there's necessary upgrades that need to be undertaken and commit to those, then the municipality would pass a formal resolution, and then that would basically become in effect once the upgrades are made within 30 days, and then we would move forward from there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shankar.
Thank you. Matthew, in the request from the citizen, it talks a little bit about safety features that need to be accommodated, like safety fencing.
It's quite possible that fencing is required. The rail standards always are constantly changing. So if there's natural features in place that would keep people from entering that right of way, then it might be that they're already there, or there's a possibility that fencing would be required.
Thank you, Councillor Shankar. Councillor Young, please.
I believe the last time we looked at it, that was one of the issues, the cost of fencing about a mile on both sides.
A six-figure cost. I can't remember what it was, but it was a lot of money.
However, today's different than it was back then. We're looking at developing land along the railway tracks. So this would be appropriate even if we weren't taking the whistles and the bells, silencing those. This would be appropriate for safety reasons. So.
Excellent point on that as well. We do have so much land right around the tracks here in town, both people living there now and, well, everywhere in town's a stone's throw from the tracks really, so.
Back then I recall Councillor McConnell talking about how he used to wander along the tracks on his way to high school. And we're lucky that he didn't get hit by a train back then.
Your memory is always an error. I mentioned that I crossed the tracks along with a lot of other people at Josephine Street, because actually, when I learned to drive, Josephine was a crossing. You could drive across there, and I did. That's when Elliott Lumber had property on the other side of the tracks as well. That's no longer the case, but I'd be willing to bet you took the same route.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right across, shortcut through where your place is, right up to Central and around through Walker. Everybody in the west end of town walked the tracks back then.
And the folks that worked at the factories, the General Spring that was at the time, and the plastics plant, you could see them going that way of their lunch pail as well.
To the people who are looking forward to the silencing of these whistles, it's a long process. It won't happen in the next couple of weeks. So
I imagine it'll be a while getting a response. Then we've got to get cost estimates. Perhaps there's grant funding. I don't know what's available. I don't know how far we've looked into it, but maybe there is something there. And you go back to the other issues too with CN and just the whole rate of return and the crossings and all that prime real estate that they occupy right through the middle of town. Not that I'm really complaining about that, but at the end of the day, they receive a lot more from municipalities than they end up giving us back at the end of the day. So maybe there is something here and we can really look at it. And the funny part is when you grow, like I don't notice it at all. And I'm an extra couple blocks, so I'd be willing to bet you don't either. Maybe not.
I can go a whole day and I'll be laying in bed at night and I'll hear a train in the summer. I think, Jesus, I never heard another train all day.
It's funny though, the people that, I mean, Robert Warren always said that, because Bob's comment always was that if you grew up here, you don't hear it. You move here at any time, you never get used to it. And I can see that because sometimes when some of them blow that whistle pretty damn hard coming through town at night as well. Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, last term, it strikes me that we had someone or someones wanted to get a petition about the train whistles. And I'm just wondering, I can't remember where that went, if it went anywhere or they decided to abandon it, I'm not sure, but I'm just wondering, is it different now that one person can make the request and get the results, I guess, or get a action on it, I guess, is that what I'm asking? Yeah.
I don't think we've had a formal request before. I mean, I've had people approach me and I'll bet almost all of us have had people approach and always, I know I've always said, yeah, you can come to council and ask about it, but it's a challenging process because I'm just like Ray, I'm up front with it's expensive and it's going to take a while because it's not something we can just request. And then I know it's happened a few times and I've never heard anything further, if I remember correctly, and this goes back a while and it does come up a lot.
But you're right about the people moving here were the ones, the 2 or 3 or 4 that I had complaining had been newcomers to Prescott. And I was a newcomer here once, and about the 3rd night I was here, I didn't hear the train anymore. So, just it's an individual thing, really, it boils down to.
I had a friend that moved back to Prescott last summer or the summer before. It's in the last couple of years. And she really noticed it and had forgotten about it because I've been living in Brockville for the last 20 years or so. But it just never came forward with the formal request. But it's good to look at it again because it's been a long time since we got any numbers. It's over a decade. Lee?
Just as kind of an interesting anecdote, Ray mentioned that we looked at this 3 terms ago, which was my first term on council. That'd be 12 years. And that year we had the Megantic accident in Quebec in the middle of town that killed a number of people. And our emergency practice thing that year was a train derailment. in Prescott, and I wasn't part of the group that was part of that, but I went and observed. And the gentleman that spoke to us that day was actually from CN. And somebody asked the question, how many trains go through Prescott in a day? And it just blew me away because I don't remember the exact number, but it was between 70 and 75 trains a day. And it just happened that the next meeting that we had, former councillor and former mayor Robert Lawn mentioned the train whistles again. And I said to Robert, how many train whistles do you hear today, Robert? And he said, well, around 20, I guess. I said, well, if you're only hearing 20, then I guess you don't really have a problem. He was absolutely shocked when he heard that it was over 70. So you hear them sometimes you don't. I guess they don't bother me. Well, like you say, I've grown up here. I'm used to them.
I will note that I did notice the quiet when we had the shutdown overnight or whatever it was, 36, whatever. I think it was 24 hours. Anyways, it was the one overnight when we had the accident there last year. I noticed that. I found it kind of, because you hear the 401 louder, actually. It seemed like the 401 noise was more present in town, where you just don't pay attention to it most of the time. So, Ray?
Does anyone know Augusta's approach to train whistles?
I can hear them coming from Blue Church Road when the windows are open in the evening. You hear the Blue Church and you hear each one coming down. That's sort of, they still definitely blow. Yeah.
We spend all that money in it. Like they just gotta stop. You're just gonna be 2 seconds away, and then it starts again. It's just that's a really good point, because we could do all this and it might not impact on it at all.
West End will complain about Merwin Lanes.
Wow.
Yeah,
I was
that's
just gonna say
kind
the
of carries.
difference between
It's very close, really.
Sophia Street, there's not much difference in the noise level there. And it should be noted too, that in the west end of town, we have 2 blocks of houses that front on Railway Avenue. And we also have Clarendon Street, which is a block below that. And I don't recall these requests ever coming from somebody there. It's always been from somebody farther south. And this one, I think, is from somebody on James Street, which is the street that I live on.
I think I had one it was off Duke or something like that at one time. Close, it was in the golf course area. I think we've had them, closer in that area, but yeah, that could be a point. But yeah, that's something we're going to have to explore. That's a really good point, because if we're not going to, you end up spending all this money and do this, and you lower the decibel level by something inconsequential, then you've got to ask what the point is in the end. So that's another discussion for CN, how that's all handled.
And the other point about decibels, train whistles today are probably many times the decibel count that they were 30 years ago or 20 years ago, which, people who have lived here learn to accept it, but the surprise of the new modern train whistle with the high decibel count is a shocker, especially if you've got guests playing number 5 on Prescott Golf Course. And they've never heard it before.
It can make you really jump when you're over there. You can remember that years ago. Yeah. What the hell?
Especially when they're a 200 par or something.
I mean, I'm in favor of this motion. It's, I think we re-look at it when we see what the demands are from CN and all that. Like if it's $200,000-$300,000, I think we have to take a hard look at that.
Yeah, and that's what stopped it in its can't believe I was going to say in its tracks before. But that did really halt everything back then, because the cost was, I think Lee's right, it was like $250,000 or something like that for that whole corridor of fencing. And then I don't recall us bringing that up way back when, although maybe but that's a great point, because we're right on the main line. So I don't know if we can insulate ourselves from that noise simply if they're going to blow it right to our borders and then skip as I mean, and how many engineers are going to even pay attention to that during the night as well? And, you know, sometimes too, the biggest issue I've always found, and that's happened. I remember, you know, golfing years ago back there as well. Sometimes guys will lean on it, and sometimes they'll just give the little beeps, and that's much less intrusive. I mean, sometimes when they lean on it that much, and it can't. It's woken me up, and every now and again you be watching TV, and even where I am on Dibble, you can't hear the TV for a moment or two. So, anyways, it's going to be an interesting discussion, anyways, and. Something you really probably don't need to have on your plate right now to look into this with everything else going on, but hopefully CN will just hit them with some questions and they'll fill in the blanks. So, okay.
Their first answer might be their last, so.
Yeah, the cost thing is going to be interesting, but they may have changed their safety regs too. We just don't know till we ask. So we've talked that one through, I guess. So I will bring it back for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed?
I was opposed to it 12 years ago and I haven't changed my mind. There's nothing that's changed my mind since. And I don't see the point in wasting staff's time on it, quite frankly.
Fair point. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And actually, Councillor Jansman, I didn't look up on the vote on that. Do you in favor of that? Okay, thank you. Sorry if I forgetting to look up every now and again, just yell. So we are on to resolutions now. We're through staff reports. So item 13 or section 13, resolutions 13.1 is a resolution of support regarding hospital capital funding recommendation that the council of the town of Prescott support the town of Bracebridge motion 22-PD014 dated February 24, 2022 regarding hospital capital funding, and that a copy of the motion be sent to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Christine Elliott, Minister of Health, the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Michael Barrett, and Member of Parliament for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, along with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and all Leeds and Grenville municipalities. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor McConnell, seconded by Councillor Young. I forget now who brought this forward. Was it Teresa? Did you want to speak to that before I open up to everyone else?
No, I think I mentioned my reasoning beforehand. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Discussion from other members of council, comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And we do have, for resolutions tonight, we do have two bylaws. Under 14.1 is the automatic fire aid agreement with the Township of Augusta. This did come forward at our last meeting and is coming forward for formal approval by a bylaw tonight. So recommendations of bylaw 21-2022 being a bylaw to authorize an automatic aid agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Prescott and the Corporation of the Township of Augusta for fire protection services be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor McConnell, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. So we had the chief in, and sorry, Rennie, we've kept you waiting quite a while here tonight to possibly weigh in on this one. But Mr. Armstrong, Chief Rayner, any comments, gentlemen, on this before I open it up and turn it to council?
No, we're very pleased to bring this forward, and I think it puts us in line with what we negotiated with Edwardsburg Cardinal, and so. We're happy that both municipalities are on even footing and that we're able to move forward in a collaborative manner.
Thank you. Chief, any comments? You've hung around for a while. You might as well throw your 2 cents in.
No, I echo Matthew's sentiments that, we're working very well with both our neighbors and their fire chiefs. So we're very pleased. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you both, gentlemen, and open up council. Any comments, questions? It's been a long time coming. I don't know how many, this is about as old as the CN rail issue. I think it goes back 10, 12 years as well, but it's nice to finally resolve this with both Edwardsburg Cardinal a year or two ago now.
Last year.
Oh, last year. And now Augusta. So any comments, questions? Councillor Ostrander, then Councillor Young, please.
Well, it's just nice to have it in place, the same as as you were saying, the Edwardsburg Township one. It lays out the boundaries, it lays out the parameters, I guess, of what's going on here. And it just gives our guys that much more protection, in fact, when they are out of town operating. So.
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Young, please.
I was just thinking about the expiry date, December 31st, 2025. It's really not an expiry date because it keeps rolling along if nobody says anything, but I'm wondering if it should be a more formal, actual review of the bylaw between both parties at that time.
Absolutely. So I think the intention is that the agreement would have to be renewed at that time formally through bylaw, as opposed to just having an automatic renewal.
Okay.
And the wording is there to.
Yeah, it's clear that it ends on that date, and so we would have to move it forward.
That kind of got us into trouble the last time, I believe. It's an open-ended agreement that went back 20 plus years.
During that time, there may be a new subdivision someplace that nobody's thought about it today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so always good to keep that in the radar, because we don't know about those things. And that's not the benefit of the corporate knowledge thing though too. But I mean, the corporate knowledge is only as good as the papering things as well. So good to keep an eye on that. Any further comments on this agreement? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And thanks again, Chief Rayner. So 14.2, the Canada Community Revitalization Fund Contribution Agreement. Recommendation there, this is under 14.2. Recommendation reads that bylaw 22-2022 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister responsible for Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario and the Corporation of the Town of Prescott be read and passed, signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed by the seal of the Corporation. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Ostrander, seconded by Councillor Jansman. Mr. Armstrong, quick comment on what we're doing here.
So this is just the enacting agreement for several projects that we have downtown, including pop-up shops, that sort of thing. And there will be a formal announcement in the near future.
We're waiting for some little more federal arrangement of the actual formal announcement, but this is just the next step in the process to getting the check. Thank you. Comments, questions? We did discuss this also at the BIA meeting the other night. I think we did mention it there. And there's some, like I say, there's some really good, exciting things happening with the BIA overall. And there's a lot building on this. So it's a real good news story again for the downtown with this agreement. Any comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. So we are on to item 15, new business tonight. Does any member of council have any new business to bring forward? Seeing no. 16, notices of motion. Any member of council have a notice of motion to present tonight? Seeing no. 17, mayor's proclamations. We do actually have two this evening. Find them here. Thank you. I know they're in here somewhere, but thanks so much for that. So we do have two this evening, and the first one under 17.1 is a proclamation declaring May 5th, 2022 here in the town of Prescott as the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, known as MMIWG. This is just another step along the way of what we've been trying to do, particularly the last year with all those horrific revelations of the graves in the residential school sites. And we're just trying to push along that notion of education. It's very important just to get the word out there that we have to push for truth and reconciliation across Canada overall. And I was approached by residents on this particular issue, and I thank them very much for doing so. So the proclamation reads, whereas in Canada and the United States, May 5th marks the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, MMIWG. And whereas this day coincides with Red Dress Day, which was inspired by an art project by Jamie Black, a Métis woman who used empty red dresses to evoke the missing women and girls. And whereas First Nations women continue to experience staggering rates of violence, as well as ongoing oppression and sex discrimination. And whereas Indigenous women and girls have the right to be safe in their communities wherever they live. And whereas on National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, we remember the Indigenous people who we have lost to murder and those who remain missing. And we are committed to working to ensure any instance of a missing or murdered person is met with swift and effective action. Therefore, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Prescott does hereby proclaim May 5th, 2022 as the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, MMIWG, throughout the town of Prescott. And that's, of course, dated today, the 19th of April, 2022. And the second proclamation tonight under 17.2 on the agenda is a proclamation for April 22nd, Earth Day. Whereas Earth Day Canada works with many partners to address environmental challenges through developing programs in collaboration with communities, organizations, and citizens. And whereas with urban areas set to become home to 2/3 of the world population by 2050, and as climate change is being observed and experienced, municipalities find themselves at the front line of the battle against climate change. And whereas under the theme of Remedy Together, Earth Day hopes to raise awareness among Canadians about eco-anxiety and the need to take action together as a cure for both ourselves and also so as to help care for the planet. Therefore, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Prescott does hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2022 as Earth Day throughout the town of Prescott and encourages all citizens, businesses, institutions, and organizations to participate in action-oriented activities to protect, to enhance, and to celebrate the environment and our local ecology. And that's, of course, also dated today, the 19th of April, 2022. And I think we have, and actually, correct me if I'm wrong on that, have we announced formally the cleanup day and everything that's basically coinciding with this? That's coming up, well, it's this weekend, is it not?
Absolutely.
Could we, any comment on that and how we're doing that? And I hate to put you guys in the spot for this, and I should have said something at the start of the meeting. But can we announce or have something for people at home that may be watching, the date and what the arrangements are?
Looking it up on our Facebook, which I believe
would be helpful if I given you some heads up on that, and I do apologize again. We do a cleanup. We do that cleanup every year, and it's continuing this year. I did have some questions about it. Teresa, did you have?
Yeah, just from the BIA meeting, I have some details. That's 9 to 2 on Saturday, this Saturday, the 23rd, and the meeting spot to get your supplies and bags and gloves and such is right near Kelly's Beach.
So Centennial Park again, and meet there 9 to 2 this coming Saturday, the 23rd. Is that the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay. And look, if anyone is watching, look for information on social media as well. That further information will be there. Thanks very much, Teresa. Thanks, everyone. So that does take us right to item 18, closed session. We do have a closed session on the agenda tonight. So the recommendation reads, I'll ask before we do this, anyone need to take a break or do you want to just plow into this? All good. Sounds good. So the recommendation for the closed session is that we move into closed session at 7:22 p.m. to discuss matters pertaining to 18.1 approval of our closed session minutes from the last closed session, 18.2 purchase and sale. And these are under section 239(2)C, the municipal act proposed or pending. Sorry, that's just the purchase and sale. Proposed or pending acquisition of disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And that the CAO, treasurer, clerk, economic development officer, and a deputy clerk remain in the room. Could I have a mover, please? Everybody will pick Councillor Ostrander, seconded Councillor McConnell. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We will move into the in-camera session. We will be back though, for anyone that is watching the live feed. Can't estimate the time on that.